All right, well, good evening. Welcome to the latest edition of Tim Dewey's FedWatch. It is Monday, March 23rd, and we had a big day on financial markets with the Federal Reserve announcing a host of new lending facilities, support for credit flow for employers, primary market credit, corporate credit facility, secondary market corporate credit facility, establishment of third facility, term asset-backed securities, the money market mutual fund liquidity facility, and a new commercial paper funding facility. So, it's back to the alphabet soup of facilities that were first introduced during the financial crisis. I think the important point here is that the Federal Reserve is working overtime to try to restore lending capacity to the U.S. economy, trying to encourage banks to make sure that they're able to lend, and if there's sort of roadblocks in other parts of the financial system, make sure that we can step over those roadblocks by providing additional lending facilities. Really have brought to bear all of the tools they started to learn in the Great Recession, and I think that's going to be a great help over time to try to stabilize the U.S. economy. But I think you have to also be realistic here. It's not the only problem people face or the only problem firms face. The other problem firms face is actually having customers come through the door. So I think that what the Federal Reserve is doing is great, should help, but we also have the other problem that's really best for firms that are trying to limp along in this crisis. They still have some customers, still have some activity. If they're cut off from the credit markets, they're going to be able to access credit and limp their way through and survive to the other side of this crisis. That's going to be great. That's going to be very helpful. But if you don't have customers, it's going to be very hard to limp through this crisis, regardless of how much liquidity and credit the Federal Reserve is able to continue toward the U.S. economy. So some good news definitely out of the Federal Reserve, but we still are looking at some difficult times for the economy moving forward. One thing that did occur to me, though, is that these additional credit corporate debt type facilities should help alleviate some of the concerns that corporations won't be able to roll over their maturing debt in this environment. And so that could really sort of help prevent that sort of debt crisis from developing that people have talked about over the last several years. So I think that's good news for the U.S. economy overall, but again, we still have a long road ahead of us. So with that, we're going to step back, do a little bit of woodworking. I shot this earlier in the day, and then we will come back in just a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, so we're back with our box. This is the piece of mahogany I was working with yesterday, and now I have labeled the sides so I keep them in order. Next step is to put the base and the top of the box together. So in order to do that, we need a base and the top of the box. Oftentimes people will use a 1/4 inch or just slightly under 1/4 inch piece of plywood. So this is a piece of finished maple plywood. I'm not going to be doing that today. I had a piece of I had a piece of yellow heart, not maple heart. And so I sawed it into 1/4 inch widths and then glued those together and sanded them down, and it's now just a little bit under a 1/4 inch. And then the top is mahogany and yellow heart as well. So basically using some scrap up in the shop, since we don't know when I'll be able to get to the wood store again. We got to be a little bit careful of what scrap, how we use our wood. So that's the top. Okay, so what we're going to do next is route out the dados that the base and the top are going to sit in. And so for that, we'll use the router table. And for the part for the top, we've got this nice little brass gauge. It's 1/8 of an inch. And so what we're going to do is set it 1/8 of an inch back, and it's 1/8 of an inch high. So that's the top of the box, and we'll go ahead and do that in just 1 second. All right, so I have reset the router bit for a 1/4 inch height and a 1/4 inch distance from the edge. And so now I'm going to finish the other side of the boxes. We're back. The equity markets were soft today. U.S. stocks slid. Futures are looking good. It seems to be that pattern. Monday's down, Tuesday's up. One of the problems that apparently financial markets were still dealing with today was the lack of a fiscal package. It's still held up in the Senate, at least at the time of this recording. And we're seeing a competing bill come out of the House of Representatives. So we still don't have a full package of economic stimulus delivered to the U.S. economy. We really need that package. Again, this is a sudden stop of U.S. economic activity. It's something that's essentially unprecedented. This week, we'll really start to see some of those bad numbers come in. The data is going to start to catch up to reality here. We're expecting initial claims come in Thursday of at least 1 million. Some estimates are 2 million initial claims. These are numbers that are unheard of. It's interesting. Economists commented to me today that, well, initial claims, what kind of leading indicator is that? There are no leading indicators for this recession. Everything was fine until 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then everything fell apart. There's just nothing to grasp onto on the data side as we move into this next phase. So leading indicators in this case really weren't going to be very leading in any event. So what we need, though, is for some of this fiscal stimulus to come through. The House package is apparently around $2.5 trillion. That's getting into the kind of money that I think we're going to need to support the economy as we move through this more difficult phase heading forward. But I still think we're probably going to need more than that, depending, of course, how long we're shut down, the depth of the damage during this shutdown, number of firms that go bankrupt during this shutdown. All of that will depend upon will influence our ability to pick up activity on the other side of this. So more money is better in this circumstance. I don't know if the House package is really quite there yet, but going up day by day is the right direction. We seem to be moving. So the direction is right, but we still need to finalize this package and move it through to the economy. So faster the better on that front. All right, so next stage of the box making process is coming up right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so next step is I want to get the top of the box right snug into that groove, and it's a little bit thick. So we're gonna make a couple passes through the sander to get it right exact size. And there we have it, all snug into the groove. Perfect size. Okay. We need to take our base and size it. It's going to be about 10 3/8 as the width here, the length, excuse me. So 10 3/8 should do it. So we're going to go and set that up. We'd actually prefer to go a little bit bigger than smaller because it's easier to fix it. If you cut it too big, it's not really particularly easy to fix it if you cut it too small. So that's 10 3/8. So we're going to start that up. should stop it. Big. All right, today I had my first viral tweet. That is a new development for me. I really don't get that much traction on Twitter, so it was kind of a surprise. The issue really is that there's some rumblings that it's time to reopen the economy. Essentially, we've been shut down for at least a week, depending on where you are in the country. It seems that there's a contingent probably trying to influence President Donald Trump to try to reopen the economy as soon as possible. The reason for reopening the economy is quite obvious, as we just discussed in the last segment, that initial claims are soaring, unemployment is rising. We don't have a system that easily deals with the kind of economic event that we're going through. And that's just the employment slash wages slash activity side of the equation. The other side of the equation is a healthcare system that's probably not up to the task of dealing with a pandemic of this magnitude. So it's clear that the longer we keep the economy shut down, the more damage we're going to do, absent the fiscal stimulus that we're going to need to counteract that damage. So one solution is to dump a bunch of fiscal stimulus in the economy to do what might be necessary, and that might be actually changing some of the structures of the economy in order to achieve the goal of holding the economy together. Alternatively, you could try this plan of, well, let's just reopen the economy and see what happens. I suspect what's going to happen, and what the health experts are telling us, is that if we just reopen the economy, we're going to see the cases of coronavirus begin to rise, and possibly rise uncontrollably and overwhelm our healthcare system. So the healthcare experts are right now don't seem to be thinking that is the right way to go. I think what we need to do is move to a system where we have adequate levels of testing and quarantine and containment of the virus before we can start to really talk about how we're going to reopen the economy. So I think prior to getting the public health response on board, the idea of trying to reopen the economy is probably a non-starter. It's also the reality that the federal government might not really be able to influence that very much. A lot of state governments have been enacting these shutdowns. And so those are going to continue regardless of, I suspect they're going to continue regardless of what President Donald Trump wants. So, just something to keep in mind. I think really to get a grip on the economic situation, we really have to first get a grip on the human situation. And that means really doing our part to shut down economic activity, to avoid contact, to really try to control the spread of the coronavirus until the public health authorities can catch up to the situation. All right, so next step on the box. So I'm just going to use the rotary sander to finish the sanding on the top piece. Earlier I sanded the sides as well. All nice and smooth. Okay. So we can do a sample construction. All right, well, that's it for tonight. Quick review. Remember, we are still working on polishing up the style and substance of these videos, but we're making progress, I hope. You saw yesterday we finished gluing up the box. So this is our box so far. You can see that the miters actually worked out fairly well. There's always one that never seems to want to cooperate fully for me, but this is a very good box. So that mahogany I was working with was very straight. Not a lot of bend or curve to it, and that helps immensely in the process of constructing it. You will notice that we have a box that is solid. It has no lid. It is unopenable. And tomorrow we will work on opening it up and handling the next stage of the box making process. All right, well, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much, and we will see you later.